Now, in today's adventure, what we're going to be talking about is how you can use ISNULL. It's a function in SQL Server. When you have a field that's being returned in a record set where it's null, you can alter it or sort of replace on it so that you don't have to deal with null. Here's why you might want to do that. Let's say that I'm pulling out a text field and then an order, like an integer field from this table, and then I want to order it by, of course, the order field. Notice what happens. Through some mistake in data entry, when this record with sales was created, the person forgot to put an order number in there. Well, one of the problems with numeric fields is that if you have a null value, it's sort of it evaluates it as a low number, like 0 as an example. So it takes it and it puts it in the front of the line because if you want to think about it this way, null doesn't weigh as much as 100. Kind of think about it like that. But that's not really what you might want to do. For a null value, you don't necessarily want it to go to the front of the line. What can you do? Well, here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same exact query, but I'm just going to put an isNull, and I'm going to run this isNull function around the DP order field. So if it finds a record, if this record that gets returned has a null value for DP order, it's going to replace it with this. It's going to swap out the null and put 99999. So here's what's different. Now that it does that, do you see in this case how sales was the first record? Well, here, sales is the last record. Why? Because instead of having a null value which pushed it to the top, now it made it really heavy, so to speak, and now it went to the bottom. So that's how you can use isNull. It basically takes an empty value or a null value and it replaces it with something that kind of works for whatever it is that you're trying to do. Last but not least, let me show you something kind of neat here. If I'm trying to concatenate a couple of things, like here, now you would never necessarily do this, but all I'm trying to do in this next query, see how we have the description and then this number? I just thought I'd add them together. It doesn't really do anything for me. I just wanted to demonstrate something. When you want to concatenate a string or text and then an actual number, you have to use cast to change that number into a varchar or some other type of text. And then it lets you do that no problem. Except here's the problem with this. When you do this, even though what we're doing is legal, even though what we're doing here is legal, do you see what happens when we had a null value? See, again, here, sales is null. Well, what happens in SQL Server is if you try to add the description of sales to a null anything, it doesn't just leave it at the word sales. But when you try to concatenate two values and one of them is null, it just makes the whole thing null. It's kind of like multiplying something by 0. SQL Server doesn't handle nulls very well. What you could do is this. You wrap this whole thing over here in an isNull, and then just put whatever, whoops, like that. And then, all of a sudden, when we do this, and we run it the second time, see here, now we see the word sales. Here everything was completely nulled out, but here now we have the word sales on this because we're taking the part of it that was evaluating to null, which was ruining the whole thing, and so now we fixed it. So that's basically how you use isNull. You use it when you're anticipating a field that has a null value and you want to replace it with something that works a little better with what you're trying to do.